The rain fell in a soft, steady rhythm, blurring the city lights into a watercolor painting. Inside the dimly lit music studio, Wang Yibo was lost in a different kind of world, one of intricate beats and synth melodies. He was working on a new album, a project that was a departure from his usual high-energy pop. It was personal, introspective, and a little melancholic. It had been almost 3 years since the 10-cent Starlight Awards, since Xiao Zhan's shocking public promise, and a lot had changed. They were still a power couple, a public monument to courage, but their separate careers had pulled them in different directions. The late-night calls and the rare, stolen weekends felt more precious than ever. The silence of the studio was broken by a sudden knock on the door. "Yibo," his manager's voice came through, a frantic whisper. "You have to see this." He frowned, pulling off his headphones. "What is it?" "Just look." The manager's face was pale, his phone held out like a live grenade. Yibo took the phone, and his world stopped. A single, grainy photo from a fan's social media account. It was a candid shot of a film set, and in the foreground there was Xiao Zhan, laughing with the crew. But it was the man standing just behind him, a faint smile on his face, that made Yibo's heart leap into his throat. It was him. It was a photo from the set of Yibo's new film, a top-secret project no one knew about. What was Zhan doing there? Yibo scrolled through the fan's post, and the truth began to unfold. A fan had been waiting outside the studio and had accidentally captured the moment. The caption read, "OMG! Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan on the same set. What is happening?" It was a firestarter. Within minutes, the post had gone viral. The internet was in a state of collective shock and exhilaration. The reunion that fans had been dreaming of for years was happening, but they had no idea why. A rush of conflicting emotions hit Yibo. Shock, confusion, and a thrilling, gut-wrenching sense of hope. He looked at his manager, his eyes wide. "What's he doing here?" The manager, still a little panicked, gestured vaguely. "I don't know. I told the director not to let anyone know you were on set today." Just then, Yibo's phone buzzed with a message from Zhan. Surprise! The word was a tiny, mischievous bomb. Yibo's mind raced. Was it a cameo? A secret project? He knew how much Zhan's schedule was a masterpiece of impossible logistics. For him to be here, in person, meant something monumental was about to happen. Yibo put on his jacket and walked out of the studio, a man on a mission. The rain had picked up, but he didn't care. He found Zhan standing under a covered walkway, a small, knowing smile on his face, a paper cup of coffee in his hand. "You're a madman," Yibo said, walking up to him, a mix of disbelief and adoration in his voice. "The entire internet is about to implode." "I know," Zhan said, taking a sip of his coffee. "I thought it was time to give them something to talk about." He held out the cup to Yibo. "I have a lot to tell you. But first, have some of this. You look like you're about to faint." They walked back to Yibo's trailer, the quiet patter of the rain the only sound. Inside, Zhan finally explained. "It's not a cameo," he said, his eyes filled with a conspiratorial excitement. "I'm the director." Yibo froze, his mind reeling. "You're... what?" "For the past year, I've been secretly working on a film script. A story about two people who find each other against all odds. I've been quietly pulling strings, getting investments, and building a team. And I wrote the lead role, for you." He paused, letting the bombshell land. The film is called The Reunion. The title sent a shiver down Yibo's spine. It wasn't just a movie, it was a metaphor for their lives. The reunion that shook the internet was a deliberate, beautiful lie, a public relations masterstroke that was also the most genuine declaration of love he had ever witnessed. It was a new chapter, a new project, a new world they would build together, in the open, for everyone to see. Wang Yibo stood frozen in the trailer, the low hum of the rain outside the only sound besides the frantic beat of his own heart. "You're... what?" he managed to repeat, the words barely a whisper. The idea of Xiao Zhan, the man he knew as a talented actor and a sensitive artist, as a director felt mind-blowing enough, but the fact that he had been secretly working on this for a year, and the fact that he wrote the lead role for Yibo, it was a grand, beautiful gesture that completely overwhelmed him. Zhan's smile was soft and knowing as he reached behind him and pulled out a simple, black-bound script. It had no flashy cover or title, just the name, The Reunion, printed in elegant white font. He held it out to Yibo. "Don't just take my word for it. Read it." Yibo took the script, his hands trembling slightly as he felt the weight of the pages. He sank into the plush leather couch, a man who had just been handed his own destiny. The trailer, once a sterile, temporary space, now felt like the most important place in the world. He opened the first page, and the words on the paper began to blur with the memories in his mind. The story was a familiar one, but told from a different perspective. It began with two young men, both on the verge of fame, navigating a fictional historical drama set. Their initial rivalry, their slow and cautious friendship, the unspoken understanding that grew between them, it was all there, written with a heart-wrenching accuracy that could only have come from someone who had lived through it. He turned the pages, each scene a fresh, vivid wound of memory. There was a scene on a bridge in the rain, where one character confessed his fears to the other. There was a scene where they sat quietly in a quiet room, sharing a meal and a rare, comfortable silence. There was the constant, subtle tension of their secret, the unspoken language they used to communicate their deepest feelings without a word. Zhan, seeing Yibo's intense focus, moved to the other side of the trailer, giving him space, but his eyes never left Yibo. He watched as Yibo's face, usually so composed, began to register a whirlwind of emotions. He saw the flicker of a smile at a private joke he had written into the dialogue, the tightening of his jaw at a particularly difficult scene that mirrored their own real-life struggles, and the glint of tears in his eyes as he read a scene where the characters confessed their love not with words, but with a silent, shared look of understanding. The script was a masterpiece. It wasn't just a story about two people who fell in love, it was an act of pure, unfiltered vulnerability. It was a love letter disguised as a film, and it was the most beautiful, terrifying gift Yibo had ever received. He was not just being asked to act. He was being asked to step back into the most challenging and painful moments of his life and relive them on camera, but this time, with the ending they deserved. When he finally reached the last page and closed the script, the silence in the trailer was so profound it felt like a physical presence. He looked up at Zhan, and his eyes were filled with a profound, soul-deep awe. "You wrote our story," he said, his voice a raw whisper. "I wrote a story," Zhan replied softly, walking over to him. "And you're the only person who can bring it to life." He knelt down in front of Yibo, their eyes at the same level. "I was tired of everyone else telling our story for us, with their fan fiction and their gossip. I wanted to tell the real one. The one that belongs to us. Are you ready to tell it with me?" Yibo's acceptance of the script was the beginning of a new chapter for both of them, a journey that would take their careers and their relationship into uncharted territory. The film's official announcement sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. The news, carefully timed and strategically released, was a simple press release. Tencent Pictures announces new film, The Reunion, directed by Xiao Zhan, starring Wang Yibo. The public's reaction was nothing short of a digital earthquake. The tag for the movie's title immediately topped every trending chart. Social media exploded with fan edits, memes, and impassioned comments. The fan base, who had spent years in a state of suspended hope, erupted in a chorus of celebration. It was a victory for them, a validation of their years of unwavering support. But the industry's reaction was more complex. Critics were skeptical, viewing it as a calculated move to capitalize on their public relationship. Executives were wary, seeing the project as a high-risk gamble. But for Zhan and Yibo, none of that mattered. They were in their own world now, focused on the work. The first day of filming was a surreal experience. It was a familiar setting, a film set, with its organized chaos of cameras, lights, and crew members. But everything felt different. The air was charged with a new kind of energy, a sense of purpose that transcended a typical movie production. Zhan, in his new role as director, was a revelation. He was patient and meticulous, his direction a perfect blend of technical expertise and emotional understanding. He knew exactly what he wanted from Yibo, and their communication was a seamless, silent dance of knowing glances and shared history. The mind-blowing scenes were not the grand action sequences or the dramatic monologues, they were the quiet moments. There was a scene where their characters, after years of separation, simply sit on a bench, looking at each other without a word. The raw emotion in Yibo's eyes, the quiet strength in Zhan's posture, it was a performance so real, so true, it felt like a documentary. The crew, many of whom were unaware of the film's deeper meaning, were captivated. They were watching not just two talented actors, but two people living a profound, unwritten love story.